I couldn't find one doll.
Yeah.
All I could find was a white doll and a black doll. There's nothing else.
Right.
They need more diversity because there's all types of people in the world, and they're missing a lot.
They're missing a lot. And so you said a couple things that had me thinking. You just said if it's just black or white. So we have something that we call dichotomies. They're opposite ends. And this world tries to push this narrative on us that it's either or. It's black or white. It's this or that. And there's no in between. So think about the people that are in between that get completely missed and they're invisible and they're erased.
Like, no.
Right.
No.
Right. And then also, if it's just black or white and we're at the polar opposite of whiteness, then what does that mean for us in terms of what our identity is and how we can feel proud about ourselves and our heritage? So I think there's a lot of messages that when you're going down the aisles of toy stores or what you see or what you can be able to purchase that really talk about who am I and where do I belong.
Welcome to Living in 3D Power. Discover your truth, discern your path, determine your power. I'm Dr. Amber Sessoms, and together, let's unlock our power, build authentic connections, and foster collective liberation. Welcome back. It's episode 10 of Living in 3D Power. We made it to double digits just like M, y'all. And today we're diving into something that goes beyond just toys, beyond just history. We're talking about representation, identity, and the power of seeing yourself in the world around you. So have you ever noticed how certain images, certain stories stay with us, how they shape the way we see ourselves, even when we don't realize it? That is the power of this conversation. And recently, Emma and I watched the Black Barbie documentary, and we also visited Portraits of Identity, Harrisburg Asian American Pacific Islander Stories Through the Lens exhibit. And let me tell you, seeing better known as Happy members from our state of Pennsylvania museum, seeing the journey of making Black dolls mainstream, it left a tremendous feeling of pride in Black and brown people's physical bodies being sites of protest simply because we exist in a world that tries to erase us. And this is why Emma and I sat down for a conversation about this very topic. She had so many thoughts, as she always does, about what she saw, what she learned, and how it connects to her own experience with dolls. We talked about what does it mean for kids to see themselves reflected in their toys and books and the media? Why did it take so long for toy companies to create Black and brown dolls? And how does seeing yourself or not seeing yourself affect your confidence and sense of belonging? And if you've been tuned in, you know that Emma is always going to keep it real. And let me tell you, she had some thoughts. So let's get into it.
It's me, it's me, it's me. It's me, it's me, it's me. Hey, it's me, Emma. Welcome back to Living in 3D Power, and today we are going to talk about dolls/Barbie dolls.
So why is this a topic that's coming up today? What were we watching yesterday?
Yesterday, we were watching a documentary called Black Barbie.
It's such a good documentary. If y'all haven't caught on, we love documentaries over here. Daddy watched with us this time, and he was super intrigued. He was like, wow, I didn't know that. And I think he was most intrigued by the part where they showed the Black doll company, and he had never heard about that. I hadn't either. And of course, I'd never had one of those dolls, which I would have loved to have. But from your perspective, what was the standout moment from you in the documentary?
I would say that it took very long to make the first Black Barbie. I think the first Black Barbie came out in like the 60s.
I think it was the late 70s, right? We'll have to go back and check the timeline, but...
So I
or
think,
early 70s.
I think didn't it say the first Black Barbie came out in the 80s?
I think was actually named Barbie. It wasn't like Barbie's friend. Remember, that was a big thing.
Because they made a black Barbie, but they call it Barbie's friend.
Yeah, friend of Barbie. So she had a different name. And do you remember why that was so significant that they finally had a black doll named Barbie and not Barbie's friend?
No, I don't remember why.
So the first black Barbie, she had a different name, Stephanie or something. I don't remember her name.
Yeah, I think it was
But it was
Stephanie.
Friend of Barbie or Friends of Barbie. And I think that might have been in the 60s. And I remember in the documentarian, her aunt is a Barbie lover because she made dolls for Mattel. I think she worked there 40-something years. So she has all these dolls in her house. So she was talking to her aunt, and she's super intrigued about this. She wanted to learn more. And she said whoever the owner of Barbie or Mattel was at the time would come down to the line and ask them what their thoughts were on what Barbie they should make next. And she was one of the only, if not the only, black person that worked there. And she was like, I'm going to shoot my shot. She's like, I'd love to see a black Barbie. And remember, they were like, oh, we'll see about that. It's like, we had to think about that. Or I had never, ever considered that. That's an interesting thought, right? Because I think when the documentary opened up, they were asking about how the black Barbie came to be. Remember, the lady was conceptualizing, or she was thinking about, here's how I think it happened. They had never had a black person before, and they got in the boardroom, and they said, what about a black Barbie? And everyone's like, I never thought about that before. And it was like this light bulb went off, and they're like, there's other people in the world that don't look like me. And I think that was one of my takeaways from the film. Clearly, right? But I think in a world that makes dolls and it's consumerism, and you think about we're only going to consume or we only going to buy for people that look like the majority, you're leaving out so many people like us. Millions of people, millions of billions of people. So you think about now this world, black and brown people are the global majority. And if we're still centering white people, what does that mean for us that exist all over the globe and how we influence the culture all over the globe?
It's
so
like the planets.
Yeah.
Yeah, the planets have their own places, and the white people are in the middle.
What planet? You have to unpack that for me. What do you mean?
Wait, the sun is in the middle, right?
The Earth is circling it?
Yeah, and then the Earth is the black people, and then this is the sun, and they're circling around it.
Oh, I get you. I love the way your brain works. So you're thinking about, because we're centering whiteness, and then we would be the planet that's circling around whiteness in proximity to it, but never getting close enough to it. And I'll take it a step further. So if you think you have to be far away from the sun, because the closer you get, you're going to get burned, right? So that did come up in the film where they were talking about proximity to whiteness. So meaning that I can be adjacent or I can be close to it, but I can never be it, right? We can't change the color of our beautiful brown skin or change, right? Or that we would even want to, or that we would change our hair to look more white. But the overall point is,
like dyeing it blonde.
And people do that. I'm not a fan, but you know, to each their own.
No.
Right. But I think what the point was is that when they first started making the doll, they didn't change the actual features of the doll.
Yeah.
They just changed the skin tone.
Yeah, they were just like, let's keep it the same, just change the skin color. No one will notice.
And I don't even know if they changed the hair the first time. That was always my thing, because I'm really particular about hair, particularly highly textured hair in black culture. A lot of my research was on black hair, right? So thinking about all y'all girls have natural hair, and you all have locks, and now we all have locks. But I remember... Except Daddy, you know, maybe we can convince them, then we'd be the Lock family. Daddy, Emma has an idea. We'll get him a wig and try it out first and see what he thinks. I think he could pull it off, though. I think he look good.
Yeah, he could pull it off.
He still had his hair at 44. Listen, this is a good thing. At any rate, now I lost my train of thought because you started talking about Daddy, and I'm imagining him with locks and how much he probably would not like that.
He would love it.
What were we talking about, Em?
We were talking about how...
The hair texture.
Yes, the hair.
So when you think about the film, and you're like, it took them until the late 70s to get a doll, but then you say, quote unquote, black Barbie, what was significant to you about having a black doll actually named Barbie and not friend of Barbie?
Because, like, they're actually a part of the Barbie universe and not, like, just the side character.
The side character. What's the side character? What do you learn about the side character?
No. All they say is hi.
All they say is hi. And it makes me think right, about movies, or even today, I'm really sensitive to seeing movies where the main character is white and then they have the black friend. And you don't learn anything about this black friend. And usually they're goofy.
Wait, they were gonna put babysitter too. They said that in the movie. They were gonna put Barbie's best friend / babysitter, and then they're like, no.
They had to scratch that because the thing that I did appreciate was that Mattel will have focus groups and they'll ask people that are from that culture, what do you think about this? And they were like, miss me with that. They were like, that's not gonna work. Like what? Like best friend, sidekick, or babysitter? Excuse me? Why can't we, like you said, be, how did you describe it, as the center of the universe?
Yes, the sun.
The sun. And not circling around it.
Yeah, not the earth.
Not the earth. No, I think that's really important. So thinking about when Kitty came on, I can't remember her last name, but she was the first black designer in the 70s she came in.
Yeah.
Or maybe late 60s, I can't remember. But this is the power of representation. So before her, they tried to have some dolls like then, and then she came in, she said, well, let's change the structure. Let's change the nose. Let's change the waist. Let's change the hair.
Yeah, because none of us are built like this.
Right, right. Even though people try to manipulate the body to look like that. And I think that's the power of representation, the power of dolls. So there were several women in the film, particularly the one black lady with locks, that got really emotional, and she was surprised by her emotions because she says, like, and I felt that because she was saying, I didn't have any dolls. And I think she moved from, or maybe it was the other lady, I can't remember, the Miss USA. I think she was Miss USA, or she was
Miss California.
Miss California, there you go. Because she moved from primarily black area to a more white area, and how she struggled because there was no one that looked like her. And remember, they were calling her names, racial slurs. And you're like, they can say that? I'm like, no, but they did. They called her the N-word, right?
Yeah, and chocolate bar.
And chocolate bar, and how emotional she got as an adult, taking herself back to that. That kind of trauma lives in your body. And so seeing her get emotional about the lack of representation, and then the black woman who got emotional thinking about there was no doll that looked like me. I felt that because I remember when I was little, I remember coloring, because the lady said in the film she used a crayon or a marker to color the eye color in of her doll. I would take a brown marker or crayon and I would color my dolls to make them look like me, because again, I didn't have any dolls that really represented me. Now, in the late 80s, early 80s, they were doing better with that. But again, it was only one color, and it still didn't look like me. You think about us from the African diaspora, all the variations of color that we have. You can just think about us even in our family. Think about Graham all the way to me, and think about the variations in color.
There's so many different colors.
There's so many, and we're all beautiful. But the hard part is when you only have one color that's represented. So say you don't fit within that color, it makes you, so you're making a questioning face. It makes you question, well, where do I fit in? And if you don't have yourself seen, if you're invisible, it makes you think about, where do I belong? Am I valued? Am I beautiful? So remember the lady saying in the film, I didn't think my brown skin was beautiful. And I felt that pained me, because that, again, was part of my experience. Why I was so intentional with you girls about making sure that you loved your skin and loved your hair. Yeah. Right. And you're making me think of the one thing they talked about, what stuck out was, and they said this in the film.
Your face, though, you're like...
Well, because I think the biggest thing for me is, one of the biggest things for me is hair. I did a lot of research, especially for my dissertation, thinking about black women and natural hair. And y'all, none of the girls have ever had relaxers. So I think I really prided myself on that, and teaching you very young to love your hair, how it naturally goes out your head. Now you do have locks now, but thinking about all your years, and is this year 3 now for your locks, I think? I think we're in year 3.
3?
Is it?
I
2 or
think.
3, something like that. But thinking about how much pride you have in your hair, and the one year when, was it 2nd grade, where, what was their 2nd grade teacher's name? Never mind, we won't say her name on here. But I remember we went for a parent-teacher conference, and she says, I asked all the students what they love most about themselves, and you said, my hair. And then she was going to take a picture for open house or for whatever it was, for when parents come in, they can see you in the hallway. And you tell her, wait a minute, take it from the back. And you had her take your picture so she could see your locks from the back. And it made me so happy, because for you to be so proud of your hair and your natural hair was huge for me, because at your age, I would have never, ever said that. I was getting relaxers by your age, and they were burning my scalp. It was, y'all, if you don't watch the live videos, you're missing out, because I'm just going to create a blooper reel, like I said before, of Emma's faces.
Relaxers. You told me about relaxers. It sounds terrible.
It actually is. They use this chemical called lye, and it's the same thing they put on animal carcasses to dissolve the bones. So thinking about, you're putting something on animal carcasses that dissolves bones, and we're putting that in our hair, especially as a child. So
your scalp was burning.
I had scabs in my head. It was actually very painful. And I remember you would sit there and you would just suck it up. You would just take the pain, because the end result was that you would have this flowy hair like a white girl. And I remember my cousin Lisa, she would say, after we get a relaxer, so cousin Penny would do our relaxers, and you would get your hair done, and she'd be like, now shake it like a white girl. And we would literally shake our hair back and forth, because we felt so pretty after we got a relaxer. Relaxers?
They still do relaxers?
Yes, you can still get them. People don't do it as much, because there was a documentary. I don't know if you can watch it. We'll have to see what the age is on it. But Chris Rock did a documentary called Good Hair, and he did it about the black hair care industry and really highlighting and amplifying what they were doing with these products. So showed, I want to say back then, they were starting to show a connection, a link between relaxers and health issues, particularly fibroids. So remember, I had fibroids, and I had to have a hysterectomy because of my fibroids.
Right.
So fibroids are overwhelmingly common in the black community with black women. Now there's some class action lawsuits that people are going after these companies that have put these harmful chemicals in products for our hair, and they're targeting children. So the relaxers were just for me. And I forget the other one was like PCJ or something like that. And literally you have this little girl looking like you on the cover with straight hair. And I remember when I was doing my doc research, and I focused a lot on natural black hair, and I put a picture of a box of hair dye for a white girl, and it was targeting a white girl getting her hair dyed blonde. And I said, would you market a product for your white daughter? And everyone was like, that is, no way would I ever do that. But on the other hand, we were marketing products for black girls to get relaxers, stuff that, chemicals that dissolve animal bones we're putting in our hair. So think about that, and what we do for the price of beauty, one for the price of beauty, for the price of acceptance, and for the price of ease. So back then, there weren't a lot of products for our hair. I remember it was a hot comb. You would literally put the hot comb on the gas stove, and then you would put that through her hair. We would go to Miss Merle Buckner, Miss Merle Buckner's house up the street on the corner, and you would go in there and get your hair pressed. And it's essentially just like burning all the curls out of your hair to make your hair straight. So you would process your hair that way. You put that green or blue magic grease in your hair, and that's what you would do. And if you didn't hold still, or you didn't hold your ear down, you would burn your ear, your neck would get burned, but all for the sake of beauty, because you only had materials or tools for hair that were centered on white people. So think about that. When I would get my pictures taken in school, I don't think they do this anymore. Do they still give y'all a comb?
No.
They used to give us a comb before we got our picture taken. I remember looking at this comb being like, what am I going to do with this? Because it was such a fine-tooth comb. It wasn't going to get through my hair, even with the relaxer. But again, when you're only focusing on one population of people, it leaves so many of us out. So I remember all of those experiences, and I can go right back to that and thinking about, this comb is not for me. I have to get this relaxer so I'm quote unquote beautiful, so I can have hair like a white girl. And what does that do to you? What that does is a lady in the movie, when she was getting emotional talking about her hair and her skin as a child, and she's a full-grown adult now, and thinking about that pain that she still carries. Remember when you were little and you would put your stockings on your head and walk around the house and you would swing your hair and say that you had beautiful hair? And I used to challenge you on that and ask you questions about that. Why do you think your hair is beautiful like that? And some of the things that you would say vaguely at that time, you were little, maybe 4 or 5, but you would say because you saw it on TV, or you would talk about Rapunzel and seeing Rapunzel on TV. And Rapunzel is a white girl with long blonde hair, which looks vastly different than you, right? So thinking about where are the princesses on TV that have brown skin and natural hair?
I can think of 2.
Who?
Tiana and...
From Princess and the Frog.
And what's her name? She's in Aladdin. Princess...
Jasmine?
Yes, Jasmine.
Oh, she's Arabic. Yeah, so I think there you have the 2 brown princesses, and the one black princess was so amazing for us to see. Only thing was, she was a frog for most of the movie. So that was a little bit of a bummer. But now I think at Disney, they took down Space Mountain and they put this whole new ride in with Tiana and I think just her community. So I think that's really cool. So you see these little pockets of representation. And I think in the film, that was an important concept. Remember, they kept doing a timeline, and the length of time it took them to actually have a black Barbie. Do you remember why it took so long?
Because they thought it wasn't gonna sell.
They thought it wasn't going to sell. And what do you think about that?
I was like,
So for them to say, oh, black people who work here, who are investing their blood, sweat, and tears in this company and saying, we would love to see a doll that looks like us. And for them to be like, oh, I don't know if that's going to sell. I don't know if it's going to be profitable. And sometimes, have you ever heard the phrase, you probably haven't because you're only 10, but there's a phrase that people say, people over profit. So you're thinking about the person and what that product would do for them is more important than how much money I'm going to make off of it. But in this world, if it's not going to sell, if it's not going to make money, we're not going to do it. So thinking about, we'll create a product, we'll just give you a little bit of this, and then you can be happy. We call it appeasement. So we'll say, we'll give you this thing. Are you happy now? Aren't you happy because we considered you, kind of? And the bigger issue when you think about the people that were at the conversation talking, and the one black male in particular, when he was talking about, well, we're in proximity and we're never the heroine, we're never the lead, and how that looks in terms of you growing up as a black girl in this community or in the world and seeing where do you fit in? Are you always on the side, or can you ever be the main character? And can you ever be celebrated? And can you ever have commercials that are running about you? Can you ever be seen in that way? So I think those are really important conversations that the documentary really showed. And it made me think again about my childhood and what was shown. And I think the last thing I want to say about it is that one, I can't remember the name of the brand, but it was a black-owned doll company. And Mattel actually went and helped them to get their company off of the ground because they wanted them to be successful. And I had never heard about that company. And so I think about, there was a company in the 70s, early 80s, and it closed down.
oh, I think I remember what it's called.
Right. I can see the sign in my head, but I can't remember
see
it.
But like, I know the dolls they made. They made like,
they were amazing.
Yeah, they made like black dolls. They made Asian dolls. They made Chinese dolls. They made all dolls.
Which I think is so important too, because later today we're going to go see our friend Ellen and her exhibit that she conceptualized with her husband doing the photography for AAPI people in Harrisburg. Emma wants to eat the food. But the pictures are amazing, and there's stories to the pictures. And one of the things I'll never forget Ellen saying to me is, and I think about this when we were walking down the doll aisles and looking for a doll for you, is that she finds it even harder as a Korean American woman to find a doll that represents her.
That is true.
So, right? And I remember we went, after she said that, and we went and we looked and we couldn't find not one doll that was Asian.
I couldn't find one doll.
Yeah.
All I could find was a white doll and a black doll. There's nothing else.
Right.
They need more diversity because there's all types of people in the world, and they're missing a lot.
They're missing a lot. And so you said a couple things that had me thinking. You just said if it's just black or white. So we have something that we call dichotomies. They're opposite ends. And this world tries to push this narrative on us that it's either or. It's black or white. It's this or that. And there's no in between. So think about the people that are in between that get completely missed and they're invisible and they're erased.
Like, oh, no.
Right.
No.
Right. And then also, if it's just black or white and we're at the polar opposite of whiteness, then what does that mean for us in terms of what our identity is and how we can feel proud about ourselves and our heritage? So I think there's a lot of messages that when you're going down the aisles of toy stores or what you see or what you can be able to purchase that really talk about who am I and where do I belong. So I think those are important conversations to have too.
I remember when I got an American Girl doll. I saw like only 2 black ones.
Yes, I think I can't remember if her name was Molly, but I do love the concept of American Girl doll because they have a book that goes with it. And I can't remember her name, but she was a civil rights doll. So I think that was the cool thing about that black-owned company, the doll company, because they also had, remember the pamphlet, and they told stories of actual black people. So you could see yourself, right?
I wish I could have that.
Yeah, this is really cool. So yeah, American Girl doll, and it's interesting because you're so much younger than JoJo. You're almost 12, like about 12 years difference. But I remember JoJo always wanted an American Girl doll, and JoJo's now 22 or almost 22, and there were no American Girl dolls that looked like her, and I absolutely refused to get one. And I think they did have a brown American Girl doll, but the hair was straight. And I'm like, well, why can't they do textured hair?
Wait, it's like that one episode of Blackish where she went to like this store. It kind of looked like American Girl dolls, and there was only 2 black dolls, and they're like enslaved people that got freed.
Oh, I don't actually remember that
You don't
episode.
remember that episode?
No.
When she got mad at the lady?
I don't remember that.
Tisk, tisk, tisk.
Yeah, I don't have as sharp of a memory as you. Okay, well, what is this going to look like in the future? Because there's so many black and brown people representing the culture, and you're still centering Barbie. And the last thing I think
Because it's the original Barbie.
That's what I was going to say. So tell us more about that.
The first Barbie was a Barbie with a very tight waist, red lipstick, blue eyes, like curly bangs in a ponytail with a striped bathing suit with sunglasses.
How do you remember this? But I think when you said original Barbie, remember they kind of recreated the Clark doll study?
Yeah, they had like kids, and then they hold up a black Barbie and a white Barbie, and then the kids chose the white Barbie.
Because the prompt was, or the question they asked them, who's the original Barbie? And every single one of them picked the white blonde Barbie. And this was after the diversity officer said, the goal is so that you would have 26 different kids, and 26 different kids would pick a different Barbie as the Barbie. And then the study showed, right, the study showed everyone picked the blonde, blue-eyed doll. So it speaks to how are we targeting the audience? How are we communicating that in the media? So the first thing I remember from the original Barbie, they went back to Mattel and said, did y'all market this? Because we're trying to look for a commercial and we couldn't find one. And they didn't. And remember, they couldn't even recall marketing for that. But then I think the second rendition, they were better at marketing. And then my era, so I'm thinking like late 80s, early 90s, they had the Sasha doll. I think her name was Sasha. There was a light-skinned Barbie. I don't even know if they were called Barbie, but they had different names. But she was like, I don't think they weren't princesses. They were still Barbies, but I don't think.
But they had a big dress, and then
they were fashionable.
Yeah, you could take the dress off, and then it would be like a hoodie or something like that.
I don't remember that either.
I saw that in the commercial.
Okay. So I remember, so that was a key point, though. They started having commercials with multiracial or black characters. And I think that was important because before that hadn't been a thing. We were never really big Barbie people. I don't know. I think it was more Bratz. I'm thinking JoJo always had Bratz dolls. She even has some collector Bratz now in her room.
Surprise.
LOL. Yes. But you do have 2 dolls. If you're not watching, Emma has, what is that? Is that a Bratz or LOL? I can't tell.
LOL.
So LOL has, they both have big eyes, but I think, how can you tell them apart? I don't even know. But you do have a brown girl. She's cute. And I'm sure you cut her hair.
Yeah.
So here's the thing with Emma. And I remember my cousin Penny, who used to do our hair and our relaxers, she told me that I think I cut her Cabbage Patch Doll's hair. So I guess you got that gene from me about going around scissor happy, because Emma will cut some doll's hair in a minute. I don't know why you do it, but you like to cut hair. I'm sure that's a very common thing in your households too, where your little ones are cutting the doll's hair. So you have her.
Different styles.
Yes, it's cute. It kind of looks like the first hairstyle for the first Black Barbie. She had a short curly fro. It was modeled after Diana Ross. And what other doll do you have there?
I have this one.
The baby you got from Madi. So that was something we would put on your car seat. So it has a little strap, and it's a little brown girl with little pigtails, and it has your name on it with a little zebra print. Super cute. And I love that this is one of those soft dolls that, someone makes, because in the movie, do you remember that they were showing the first Black dolls before Barbie dolls? They were showing dolls that look similar to that.
Yeah.
And I remember Aunt Dilsey lived in Genesis Court. So she lived a couple doors down from Aunt Jerry, and Aunt Dilsey would make dolls similar to that, but big dolls. She would sew them by hand, and she would, and I remember you could turn the head. Remember, we actually have some upstairs. I think we put it in storage that Tom gave you from one of your late aunts, right? And you would turn it, would be like a happy face or a sad face. But because people weren't making dolls for us, we took it upon ourselves to create our own.
Yeah, and in the documentary, one of the women said that she made a doll out of a jam can.
A jam can?
A jam jar.
A jam jar. I don't remember.
You don't remember?
Wait, what's a jam? What do you mean a jam jar?
Like an empty jam jar. You know, like those jars that you put jam in?
Oh, like a mason jar, like a pickling jar or
Yes.
something. And that's the thing. We would get super creative and innovative. So I think that's the thing about people that are used to being erased. We will resist, and we will persist, and we will create our own in a world that says it's not marketable, that we can't make money off of it. And we do know that we are the biggest consumers in the world, particularly Black people in America. We are the biggest consumers. So to continuously not make products for us is highly problematic. And the other part that's problematic is they're not products that are for us, that are made by us, but we're still continuing to consume them. So there's a new movement right now, especially with this new presidency, to focus on buying Black and brown owned, because this world is still centering the 1% who are white people, and we consume and we are buyers and we have so much power. So it's reclaiming our power and recognizing we have billion-dollar power in this market, and we can transform our spending dollars. So right now there's a Target boycott, and Target stocks are going down. People are mad about it.
30%, I think.
I think it was almost like 27%. It was something like that. So that's drastic. Tesla stocks were going down, right, because of Elon Musk. Walmart, I don't know what their stocks are doing, but people are saying, if you don't want to support us and you don't see us and you don't value us as not only being, well, I think they don't care about us being consumers. They want our money. But if you can't center us and our heritage, and you can't have products that are for us, or you can't partner with people that are making products, then we will no longer give you our dollars. And I think it's a really powerful statement. So how do we continue to create our own? And in the film, I think that was the power of that small company that started to create their own dolls. I'm saddened that the company is no longer in existence, and I question why that's not happening. But part of me understands we live in a world of consumerism and capitalism that is still centered on whiteness. So Black and brown-owned companies don't survive in this type of climate unless we have, like you said before, allies and people like Mattel coming in to support. Why did that partnership stop? I don't know. So, yeah, I think the documentary was super powerful. It really made me think about.
It was a good documentary.
I know, and I was shocked. It took us a while to watch it, but I think it was really good to watch it. So, question though, thinking about the documentary, thinking about you have your 2 dolls here. Why do you think it's important for kids to see themselves in toys? You know, you have a lot of Black books, and media? Why do you think it's important to see yourself in books, media, and dolls?
Because if it's the way you learn, you have to learn at a very young age. So if you see dolls that don't look like you, then you think that's what you should look like.
So you think whatever you do see is what you should look like?
It's the way you get learned. If you don't see dolls that look like you, then you think that you're not pretty, or you have to look like the doll.
Now, have you felt that way?
No.
So think about the ladies in the film that were really emotional thinking about that. So you're saying you can't relate to those feelings. Now tell me why you can't relate to that. Why do you think that that's something that doesn't really resonate with you?
Because I believe I am special.
What makes you special?
My personality.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, and also what keeps coming up over and over again is that we were definitely more intentional. And I think sometimes in parenting, or just as you're growing up, and I was talking about this even with my friends yesterday, that there are things that we experienced in our childhood. So you can either do one of two things. You can either become that thing and continue to push that pain onto other people, or you can heal that wound and teach the next generation another way so that they can be healed and learn the truth of who they are. So in the film where the lady's like, I hated my skin, I thought it was ugly, my prayer is that if she has children or people in her life, that she's teaching them differently. Because even adults out here today that won't go out in the sun because they don't want to get quote unquote crispy, they don't want to get dark. Black people, right? And that was a very common experience when I was growing up and thinking about people look so different in our family, right? Like you think about Graham's skin tone versus my skin tone and variations all in between. And I remember going to the beach and I would not go out in the sun. They'd be out tanning. And there's a picture of me. I have to find it, y'all. This picture of me. I'm under the beach umbrella frowning. And you can see Graham and Joe. I don't know if there was someone else, but it was at least Graham and Aunt Joe. They're laying out getting a tan. And I'm under trying to hide from the shade so I don't get any darker. Because I did not like the color of my skin. And now, I remember in recent years where...
I love tanning.
Right. When I would go to the beach and I would lay out with them and Pop be like, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? I'm like, because I want to get darker. I love my brown skin. But that took me doing my own work to unlearn those narratives that blackness is ugly. And part of that story, so when you're saying you don't see dolls that look like you, you're like, why doesn't anything look like me? Or if it does, it looks so vastly different than me that there's only one version of it that...
Small nose.
Right. So those are the things. Can we make them look different ways? So those are the things and those are the lessons that you will learn. When you're learning a lesson from what is seen, but also what is unseen. What is not seen, and how do we, as a society, make sure that we amplify and we center those images as well? Not just for people that look like us, right? For other people who don't. So it reminds me of when Meredith brought her kids over. And even though you regret giving away your baby doll... to her daughter, you wanted that baby doll back, and I was like, I almost bought you another one, but that was a good lesson for you to learn. Now they're white, and she really gravitated towards that doll.
She's like, oh, I love it.
Right, and I think that's such an important thing that you were like, I'm going to give her my black baby doll.
It was a hard day.
It was a hard day, but I was like, are you sure? You're like, yes.
Yes.
And then about a week later, you're like, ah.
Oopsie.
But I think that's important in thinking about representation matters, and not just for people that it looks like that reflects it, but also for people that are in dominant culture, are the majority, that they should also play with little black dolls to see that we're not bad. Because I recall when JoJo was little, she had one doll that was a white doll and one doll that was a black doll. And Daddy would play with her with these dolls. And he didn't even pick up on what he was doing, but he was perpetuating a stereotype because the black doll was bad. The black doll had this really gruff voice, sounding like a man. And then the white doll was all good. And these are the things that are instilled in us that we don't even realize it. And I remember saying to him, do you realize what you're doing with these dolls? And he didn't even realize it because it's so ingrained in us. It's just so automatic that we don't realize that we'll equate black with bad and white with good. So you remember how they showed you the Mamie Clark experiment and how they did a new rendition today? So they did this Mamie and Clark experiment, and if y'all aren't familiar, I'll definitely put the link in the chat, but they're asking kids, and this is what pained me, because seeing that footage, and this is something we learn in psychology, but seeing the footage every time, it still hurts me, because when they asked those little black kids,
the little boy was like,
what was the question he asked them?
He asked them,
or some of the questions that was asked.
I remember one question, which doll is bad?
I know.
I was like,
and what did they pick? Which doll did they pick? With the white doll or black doll was bad?
Wasn't it the black doll?
They picked the black doll, was bad. Here's the question that got me. So he would ask them questions, which doll is good? The white doll. Which doll is bad? Which doll is beautiful? And then the question that pained me the most was, now which doll looks like you? And he said that you would have thought he was the devil himself asking that question, because you had just went through this exercise and it was your subconscious, or the things that you don't even articulate, that you don't even say, that you just know to be quote unquote true because you're socialized to feel that way. They said it out loud, and then he asked, which doll is you? After they said all those negative things about that doll, they had to point to the doll that they said all those negative things about.
I could never.
Right. And that pained him. And they said that study alone changed Brown versus Board of Education. It wasn't the data showing that historically black schools or black areas, they were underfunded, undereducated. It was that pain, that deep wound, because we had learned to internalize this sense of self-loathing and hating ourselves because the world was pushing that back on us. And we started to believe it. So that was a pivotal moment. And I think that's why it's so critical to have that representation, not just in dolls. So I think about books that you have, why I'm so intentional about making sure you have those books, or the shows that you watch. So I'll critique it. You'll know if we're watching something, I'll be like, why does that girl look like that? Or where are the black and brown or Asian people like in this? Like, where are they?
Remember when I was watching the Who Was show and we were learning about George Washington Carver?
I think I had
You're
just,
like,
I don't know if I
what?
just walked in the room or I picked up on that. And he was like, this is George Washington Carver. And he's like, I used to be a slave. And I just did not.
You're like, huh?
I had to pause. I had to be like, let me lean in. What else are they going to say? But those are the kind of things, because especially when I grew up, and you have to be really keenly aware, because I study critical media literacy, critical discourse analysis, which means that there's meaning in media production. Like, you just think a commercial is a commercial. They're sending messages to you about who belongs, who doesn't belong. Buy this and you'll be beautiful. All of those things. I don't know, y'all. Tell me, are there actual Barbie dolls? I think in the film they were saying she has locks like me, but I think they were more braids.
Yeah, they look like more braids.
Yeah, but I think that is super important, that not only to have the skin tones, but have the hair texture, especially in Black culture. We have such variation in our hair texture too. And when
All different types.
All different types. But when we start catering to one type of straight hair or loose curls and not the kinky, coily, beautiful hair, it again sends a message. So even when I think about my research and looking at how Black women feel about their hair, we still within natural hair will say, well, who has good hair, who has bad hair? So people will say it to me because when they see Graham, they'll say, oh, well, your grandmother, that's why you have hair like that, because your grandmother's hair is straight, when I had loose curls. And we just have to get to know our hair and have to embrace our texture. So I think a lot of those things are true. We live in a world that will just say, do this. It's easier for you if you straighten your hair. It's easier for you if you have blonde hair. It's easier for you women if you don't ever have gray hair, because it's only looks good on men and not women.
All those things are not true.
So we have to have people in our lives that say, that's not true. Your hair is beautiful the way that it is, or you don't have to look like anyone else. Love your hair for how it grows out of your head.
When you get gray hair, you're going to look beautiful.
I have 2 or 3 now. She tried to whisper, y'all, but she said, unlike that. Daddy got... I like Daddy's salt and pepper hair.
Salt and pepper.
Yeah, salt and pepper.
I like it. I like it on his beard, but there's like a one strip.
I like it when it's one strip, though.
Imagine if it's like split in the middle. That would be cool.
I mean, it'd be a look. But I do like a nice little patch or a nice little streak. I like it. I just haven't gotten there yet because I'm aging more gracefully.
28.
28. We'll take that. We'll take 28. And how old's Daddy then?
His age.
Oh, so Daddy looks his age, but I look 28.
Maybe 60.
Y'all heard it here first. So the joke, though, is that
He's old.
when Daddy and I started dating, and when we started college together in 99, and your dad probably looked like a middle schooler. He just showed a picture yesterday of his senior yearbook picture, and I'm like,
There's a book over there.
He looked like a middle schooler, but he would always joke, and he would say, "Because I'm gonna age, and I'm gonna age slower than you, and I'm gonna look younger for you forever." And I'm like,
No.
You heard it here first, ladies and gents.
He looks 60.
He doesn't look 60. He looks his age.
Maybe
But,
50.
oh wow, Emma. I didn't notice it was going to turn into like a roasting session for your dad. He's not even here to defend himself.
He looks 50.
Thinking about, again, like going back to dolls, have you ever had a doll that looked like you, and can you think about how that made you feel?
It didn't make me feel different.
Did it make you feel different? So if you had a white doll versus a black doll, you didn't think anything of it? And why do you think that is?
Because they're just dolls.
They're just dolls. So you never saw yourself in that? See, and I'm going to push back on that a little bit because here's some of the things that you said. And here's what came out, what I found interesting about the documentary when they were talking with the psychologist. I can't remember if she was a psychologist. I think she might have been. But they were asking them if they knew what race was. And they didn't have the language for it. They could say racism, but they couldn't define race.
I don't know what race means.
What would you say? How would you define race?
Different skin colors and different hair textures and different way they look.
And see, I think that is so important that you're focusing on what we call phenotypes, because that's literally all it is. We're saying we're going to put you in these categories based off of what you look like. But here's the thing. If you don't fit into that category, then I'm confused, and I don't like racially ambiguous people. Make me nervous. I need to put you into a category. So we start saying people aren't black enough, aren't Asian enough, aren't this enough if they don't look a certain way, because we stereotypically put people in a category. So I think that's a really important distinction that you're making about what that looks like, which is where it gets to, I can make fun of you for having quote unquote nappy hair or for having a broad nose. And I think that's really important to distinguish. But the fact that you're saying,
Who would say that?
people say that, those things, like they, so think culturally, there's things that we would do. And so Aunt Jerry would do this. She would shape our heads when we would come home from the hospital to make sure we had a nice round head, didn't have, if our mamas didn't do a good job pushing us out, she would shape our heads so we had a nice round head. She would also shape our nose so that we wouldn't have a broad nose. She would try to pinch it because we live in a society that deems standard of beauty to be quote unquote fair features. Right? So Emma's making this face. But these are the things that we're socially conditioned. We don't even realize that. We're just thinking we're just doing it because, and it's not harmful. But there's messages from media that are saying, in order to be beautiful, in order to be accepted, you have to have a certain nose.
I have the biggest nose in the house, but I don't care.
And your nose is gorgeous. Right. But
for flaring my nostrils when I'm upset.
We all do that. But yeah, I think those are things to think about. So I don't want to get too far away from what you said, though, because you said that you didn't think any differently about white dolls versus black dolls. But what I recall and thinking about those students that didn't have the language, what you did say, and this is why I'm going to push back on that a little bit, when you would see a doll that had hair that looked like yours, you would say, oh, she has hair that looks like mine, right? Or she had twists or she had braids. So there was a level of this idea that you were looking and searching for something that looked like you, even though you couldn't articulate it. You would just say, oh, I'm just playing with the doll because it's just a doll. But if there was a doll that looked like you, I remember you being in a store and you'd be like, oh, she has hair that looks like mine. She has skin that looks like mine.
I want that.
And I think that's important to remember, that maybe I don't have the language, maybe I don't recall it, but I can recall when I do see it and how I do come alive. But what I think happens, because we're so used to not having something that represents us, or not feeling seen, that we just get used to and we just settle. And that's what was coming out in the film to me, too. It's that we can't even imagine what we don't have because we don't even see it. And so then when you see it, you're like, oh my gosh, remember? And then what is this documentary? It was a show we watched before that, the Kevin Hart show on Black History Month.
Yeah.
Because remember, the daughter gave her white friend, a purple nurple because they were watching 12 Years a Slave, which I would not recommend if you're that age. And I haven't even watched it because I just don't think I can bring myself to watching that level of trauma. And she was so upset because she's like, white people are harming Black people and all this. And she was so ashamed of her history. And so he pulled her aside and he had a whole conversation with her, right? And then she saw all the amazing things that we have done as African Americans in our culture that have been hidden.
We changed the world.
And you remember, you could even see throughout the film, she was scowling and frowning. And at the end, she was so, it's like this weight came off her shoulder because she's like, those lies that I bought into thinking I had to have that shame was something I don't even have to carry. So I think that's really important. And part of that is, how do we uncover these truths? How do we tell the story through dolls, right? So thinking about American Girl dolls, they're getting better at telling more of a story. So for you, because you're so creative, and I love the idea of thinking about freedom dreaming, if you could create a doll, what would they look like? What would be their story? What would you learn from them? Is this your creative face?
Yes.
Emma could create a doll. What do you think?
So it would be a girl with alopecia.
A girl with alopecia.
With locks.
So she has alopecia where just some on her head, or she has it elsewhere on her body? Are you thinking vitiligo?
Oh, that's what I'm thinking of.
Emma thinks people with vitiligo are absolutely gorgeous. Beautiful. So she'll make her Sims designs and she'll put vitiligo on them. So, okay, you mean vitiligo, which is a skin condition where you have your pigment in your skin leaves, so you have different splotches wherever on your body. They are beautiful. So you would have a doll. She would have vitiligo, and she would have locks.
And she would be a singer.
A singer. What kind of music?
Hip hop.
Hip hop. Okay.
Hey.
So what would you learn? You have this doll. Would she have a story with her about how she came to fame?
She would have a story. Once upon a time, a girl named Andrea.
Andrea, that's a cool name.
Was singing with her mom. And then they were singing, I Want to Dance with Somebody.
Okay, Whitney Houston.
And then she hit the highest note in the song. And then a couple years later, she auditioned for a singing thing, and she became a famous singer.
Oh, I like that story. I like that story.
And the lesson is...
The lesson, important.
Is to try your best. And don't listen to all the hate.
Don't listen to all the hate. And there's a lot of hate in this world, right? And sometimes we will listen to that and we start believing it.
Don't listen to the hate.
Don't listen to the hate. That is it. I feel like she should have like a sweatshirt on that says "Don't listen to the hate" or something like that. I love it. I love it. So her name was Andrea. She has vitiligo with locks. So if that doll isn't created, maybe you can create that doll. You put it out there, say, let's create that doll. We're going to have to do a hunt, though, to find a doll with locks.
Yeah, because there's literally zero.
Oh, you know what I'm thinking about now? JoJo got you that black doll for Christmas.
Oh, yeah. That's what I was thinking of.
You have to get that doll because that doll is super cute. I love this doll. So that was a part of the Black Barbie documentary, that we culturally made our own dolls because we didn't have dolls that looked like us. And we took it into our own hands. And this doll, what is the company? Is there a tag on there?
I don't think so.
See if there's a tag, because I love these dolls. The hair alone.
Ooh.
Is it? Let me see. I thought it had, let's see if the tag. Oh, the tag. This says Animal Adventure, but I don't think, that might be the name of the company, but we'll have to get the name of the doll. But it's super cute, y'all. So she has twists in her hair, but Emma says that they're locks. We're just going to imagine that they're locks. So they could be locks, and maybe they just did a true strand twist. So it's a 2-strand twist out locks.
That's what you do to curl my hair?
Yes. So it's what Emma's hair will look like if I did a 2-strand twist or a braid out. And it's a cloth doll, like a sewn doll. And I think historically, this is such an important doll, even this is a new doll you just got for Christmas or your birthday. Christmas, because this is traditionally what we would do and culturally thinking about in Africa or back in our homeland, and here that it's a nice play on modernizing and saying, we will create our own and we will celebrate our own. She's so cute.
I love this outfit.
I know, it's really cute. So JoJo did a great job as a big sister getting you that doll.
Backflip.
So when you think about it, do you think dolls can help kids feel more confident?
Yes, because if you play with something at a young age, then it might inspire you when you get older.
I think so, yeah. Because you'll see a doll that looks like you and you won't think that there's something wrong with you or that you're invisible or you're erased. And again, I think it's important not just for you to have dolls that look like you, for your white counterparts or for other people that look differently from other racial ethnic groups to have dolls like this too. It's important, so representation is not just for people who look differently, it's for everyone to see and break these myths and stereotypes that difference is bad, right? That we live in a multiracial society, so let's start acting like it. All right, so you brought some dolls for us to look at. We had some conversation about Black Barbie and how important representation is. So what's your final nugget of wisdom for the good people today? Reverend Doctor.
Twinsies!
Oh, we did not say that. This was intentional. I had this outfit on and Emma said, you know what, Mom, you look so great today. I'm going to look like you. So she went up and got her. She's making a face, but that's exactly what she said.
No, I did not. You're lying.
No, you said, do you want to dress it like today?
Yeah.
So if she wanted to dress like that means that she liked my outfit. So let's just call it what it is, Emma.
No, it's because I had this. And that reminded me
I can't get any love. Like, just say that I like your outfit, Mom. I like your fit.
I like your fit.
And I wanted to look like you.
I like your fit.
Thank you. So final words of wisdom for the people.
Chicken nuggets.
Try again. Chicken nuggets.
Watch Black Barbie. It's a really good documentary.
It is good. Yes. Thanks, Em. Good job today.
Yay!
Love the fit. And another cheerleading move.
Okay, so I love this conversation with Emma. There's something about hearing her perspective that reminds me how deeply kids understand the world, how they see the gaps, how they see the absences, and they know when something isn't right. And in this episode, she made it clear. Representation isn't just about what's on the shelf. It's about who gets to be seen, who gets to be heard, and who gets to belong. And one of the things that stuck with me is Emma's reaction to designing her own doll. Y'all saw the way she lit up imagining a character that looked like her with the story that matters to her and the thoughts about the features and the hair and the journey. And because this, y'all, is the power of freedom dreaming, it lets us shape the world not as it is, but as it should be. And what she said about how dolls influence how kids see themselves, that hit me deep. She reminded me that representation isn't just about what's available, it's about what is celebrated. So here's what's sitting with me after this conversation. Representation isn't just about visibility alone. It's about belonging and the stories we internalize about who matters. History and storytelling go hand in hand, and the dolls we play with and the faces we see in museums, the characters in our favorite books, they all shape our understanding of ourselves in the world. And the big question, how do we make sure the next generation doesn't have to fight to be themselves in the world as we have in this generation? So now I want to hear from y'all. What is the first time you remember feeling truly seen? Drop it in the comments, send me a DM, or if you're listening to the podcast, leave a review and share your stories there. And if this conversation resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, follow or subscribe on Substack, and leave a review wherever you get your podcast. So until next time, keep discovering your truth, keep discerning your path, and keep determining your power.